the Executive Country Coordinator of Westminster Foundation, Honorable Member of Parliament, Honorable Dabo, and then the Chair of the FPAC as well, and Honorable Sane, Member for Brikama South, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're also member of the FPAC, the Chair of the PEC. That's amazing. Then we will hear from both of you. It's a pleasure to also have colleagues from the civil society and the media. This is a very important engagement. Probably before we proceed, we would like to, as tradition demand, we pray in our individual ways before we proceed. Amen. So it's a short engagement. We are planning to end at 1. If the event goes as it is planned. This is an activity forum with stakeholders to build an opportunity to dialogue on recent legislations that are before the Parliament, as well as some of the legislations that were enacted, like the access to information, to discuss on it, and also the signed MOU. There was an MOU that was signed between the Parliament and the media as well as the civil society, which was the greatest step to formalize our interaction, our relations between Parliament and the media and key stakeholders like the civil society. I think this has never happened, which is a great thing, and I believe this should be known to the public, particularly those that are key stakeholders, the civil society and the media. Another thing is this very important initiative was facilitated by Westminster Foundation, definitely through the leadership of Auntie Tabu, with the support of Mr. Usman Jallo, which is very commendable. So this is a conversation. We are going to have first the opening session, which will be followed by a panel of discussions. That is, I think, 3 discussions after the opening. So first I would like to, because Auntie Tabu is our alcalo, she is the Njatigi. You know, when you go to a village, you have to allow the alcalo to open the doors first, then we go to the other stakeholders. So Auntie Tabu, I would like you guys to join me in welcoming Auntie Tabu by a round of applause, who is doing amazing work. So Auntie Tabu, please, you have to welcome us in this very important initiative.
Thank you very much, MS. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say welcome to this important dialogue that we intended to have today. And I'll start by welcoming Chairperson of FPAC, Mr. Alaji Dabo, Chairperson of PEC, Honorable Sane, who are colleagues, who are brothers. We've come a long way. It's just that salute each other, but we are teachers by profession. Yeah, so today is not the first time we interact, but I would just like to say thank you very much for honoring this invitation, which is very important. It is by no surprise that anytime we call upon you, you find time despite the busy schedules that you have, and we all know that today is a very important day in the calendar of the Assembly, but nonetheless, you are here, and we thank you for that and welcome you to join us to interact with the civil society organizations. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome my fellow members, my fellow colleagues of the civil society, because my background is civil society. So it's a friendly and a homely atmosphere that we have today. And also welcome colleagues from the university, and also my colleague, my co-worker, Usman, to this important dialogue. I think this is a very important dialogue in our program, from the GIA program, to engage civil society as well as parliamentarians and the media, taking cue of the MOU that we signed some time back. Today, the interaction will be mainly on the laws, legislations that were passed by the Assembly, and to see the way forward, to look at the challenges, and we've invited resource persons to give an analysis of how this legislation impacted, because when we legislate also we have to take note of the impact that it has on the citizenry. And that is why we gathered here today to have this interface, to see the way forward, because any law that comes into being has some budget implications, but also have some effects, have some either positive or negative on the population. And that is why it is always important to have an interface or a dialogue, so that we can reflect on how far we have gone, what are the impacts, and what are the challenges, and come up with solutions to see how we can better the lives and welfare of the population. And that is why we gathered here. WFD is always supportive of both stakeholders, because our parliamentarians are our #1 partners. WFD is instituted to ensure that the democracy is strengthened through parliament. But also there are other partners that we work with, such as the civil society, who amplify whatever parliament does, whatever the state does, and also the media, who disseminates the information that are designed for the welfare of the people. So I think we can have a fruitful discussion today to see how we can strengthen and consolidate the gains that we have since 2016, when we embrace democracy. It's still young, it's still fragile, but I think with the dialogue, the interface, the exchanges, the interactions that we do, we'll be able to ensure that we have a better democracy. 22 years of dictatorship of Jammeh's administration. So thank you very much once again for coming, and I hope we will have a fruitful discussion by the time we leave here. But noting also that there is a budget speech that is going on today at the Assembly, and it is very important that the voices of all are heard, and the voices of all, the opinions of everyone is engendered in the discussions that will be going on later in the day. So on that note, thank you very much, honorables, for coming, and also thank you to the civil society, and welcome to this gathering.
Thank you very much. I think it's important, as you noted, the relevance of this occasion, which is to create a platform where we discuss issues around legislations and challenges, as well as implications on the budget. Also noting the importance of these legislations towards addressing the welfare of Gambians, because a legislation is good as nothing if it is not implemented, So it's important that this dialogue is the conversational, and we are also foreseeing a bigger legislation, which is the Constitution. Oh my goodness. I'm not hoping that the Constitution will be dead in the National Assembly like this when I mentioned the Constitution. So this time, we are not sure. So it's important that we have this kind of conversation. Now I will invite, because I want to invite Honorable Sane first, who is the chairperson of the PEC, which is the Public Enterprise Committee. Public Enterprise Committee, to also give some remarks. You're welcome. Please kindly welcome our honorable member.
Thank you very much, MS. First, I want to seize this opportunity to especially salute Westminster for a reliable and consistent partnership with the Parliament. Through anti-taboo, as you rightly, perfectly put it, the Alcalo. Every community you enter, you must be welcomed by an Alcalo.
Absolutely.
On that note, I want to take permission. I'm in your community now. My special regards to the representative of UTG, the CSO, and the media here in present. It is indeed a great pleasure to have this engagement, which is very important. One thing I want to emphasize, this is Parliament, and our recruitment is based on election process, which you people partake, to take us to that Bantaba, to represent you in all aspects, which is extremely important, and we operate within a time frame, after which we are subject to review, whether we are coming back or not. That depends on the electorate. What is your input? Both at the floor of the Parliament and the constituencies that we represent and the Gambia at large. So this is extremely important for us to have an engagement so that we know one another, and any issue that is of interest to the people that we represent, we need to have a dialogue so that we have a wavelength in terms of understanding. As Parliament, we also have challenges, which is numerous, and some of them are known. When we talk about the legislation, which is very important, one thing we need to emphasize, every legislation has an intent, but the impact should be felt. Because you don't legislate laws to go and gather dust. That is why we have to be careful. I think going forward, we are thinking as a Parliament, and how can we partner with the CSO so that we can have what we call post-legislative review. There are some legislation that were promulgated, and these are problems. For the National Assembly, we are confronted with a lot of issues. There are some challenging issues because we directly work with the executive. And that is why the one important mandate of the National Assembly has been delegated to the executive. That is all the policies that are made from different MDAs. These are the mandate of the Parliament, but it's a subsidiary legislation. And in fact, some of them, in fact, are not even subject to our approval as Parliament. So all the bills that are coming, be it a private member bill, committee bill, or executive bill, are treated in the way it's supposed to be done and passed. So we have a direct control over those ones. But some of the policies could be very serious. So here is a situation whereby we have a chairman who is dealing with all the public government accounts, and I am directly dealing with the 14 classified state-owned enterprises that are under our purview as PEC. This is where the famous NAVEC is under us. And if you could remember, there were a lot of things on NAVEC on water production in the industrial growth areas, urban and peri-urban areas. So some of the challenges they are confronted, as highlighted by the auditors, we went around to look at the status of the implementation. That provoked an engagement with some of the CSOs on social audit and public hearing, particularly in Bundung. And thanks to that engagement, Bundung is now getting a borehole, 3 of them that are newly constructed in Burkama, in his constituency. Because it has been more than 11 years they were not even receiving. There are taps that are there, but they were not getting any water. And not only in Bundung, but the greater part of the country are seriously suffering. And again, the water we consume Are we in position to engage the quality? Are they meeting the WHO standard of chlorinations? Some of these waters are drawn directly from the ground. They might contain iron, nitrate, you name it. So if you don't have that chlorinating plant, the treatment plant to chlorinate them, there are problems. So all these state-owned enterprises have their issues. But thank God, when we came in the 6th legislature, what we did, we promulgated a law, what we call the SOE Act, that established the SOE Commission. So under the Ministry of Finance, we also have what we call the SOE Directorate of the State-Owned Enterprises, which is also monitoring the way the Parliament and the Commission are doing. And there are what we call performance contract. Most of them, about 8 SOEs have already signed that performance contract. So we are giving them a grace period up to 3 years. They have to be paying dividend. Because they have the enterprising component, they must pay what we call a dividend. And a dividend policy is in progress. And very soon it will be validated and start implementing it. So these are some of the issues as PEC. We are also looking at GAMTEL and other areas. But our oversight, sometimes there are issues. This particular engagement is talking about challenges that we are confronted with. Sometimes we deal with accounts. When they come, there are major issues, especially adverse audit findings. So some of them are directly governance issues, but how do we enforce them and how do we put people to work? In Parliament, you can even censor the minister, but the procedure is just issue. It's an issue. One thing we failed to put into consideration, that place is a house of politicians, and we came to party politics to be a representative. So sometimes it's unfortunate when you come to decision making, especially at the floor, the plenary, to a certain level it could be politicized. So even whereas you want to do enforce things, that becomes a problem. That is why in our committee work, we try to do in as much as to make sure that we bring everybody on board. We put Gambia first. But now you can do that and come out with a very important resolutions, very important recommendation. If it goes to the floor of the Parliament, these are issues. Sometimes you send it to the minister to respond. And some of those responses will take a lot of time. Like sometimes you find it difficult. When last time we were at the Parliament, there was a ministerial response on NAVEC Social Security and GRTS. And that particular activity was sanctioned through a performance audit, and this was done in July 2023. But the response was just last week. So these are some of the issues that we are confronted. It's very frustrating.
Okay.
We want to live up to expectation, but sometimes it's difficult. But I think we have to be together and look at it. One thing that is important, it's not the executive, it's not the Parliament that owns the Gambia, it's the General Assembly, all of us. Okay. When Gambia suffer, everybody get, when Parliament and the executive are constraining, the General Assembly are morally obliged to restrain. This is very important for us. That this is the Gambia we've seen, and I want to believe that the CSO are ready, and you are important partners. Let's make sure that and strengthen this particular engagement so that we can know one another and apply it in any practical scenario, in any engagement, in order to address a fundamental problem in the country. On that note, I want to thank you, and I want to sincerely thank the Westminster Foundation for the engagement. It's not today. Since in the 5th legislature, we've been working together. Bringing us and the CSO is important so that we can talk to each other and have a common position in our approach. Thank you.
Thank you. You've made a speech and a full presentation, which I believe is very important, citing some of the challenges. You guys are politicians. This is why the public should be very much interested in what happened in Parliament, because we are also the referees outside, especially the media and the civil society, who should be giving relevant, undiluted information on how they are represented, so that whenever they are making informed decisions, they will also know who are there for the interest of the public or who are there to politicize issues, even they are relevant to the public. So thank you. I think which I believe is key. So now I will invite Honorable Chair of the FPAC, which is the Finance and Public Accounts Committee. Very important. You're welcome. Kindly join me in welcoming Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Let me also seize this opportunity to thank Madam Tabu, that is the Country Director of Westminster Foundation, for ably organizing very important event, the interface dialogue between parliamentarians and CSOs. Madam Tabu and her organization, Westminster Foundation, as earlier on alluded by my colleague, are very important partners to National Assembly. They have in many aspects, and to have them again, we once more thank them for that collaboration and partnership. And to the CSOs, this kind of forum are important in the sense that National Assembly conduct oversight on the executive, and you conduct or serve as watchdogs to National Assembly, executive and judiciary. That means we will not know our achievements, our challenges, when we don't have that function from the civil society to be able to measure the challenges, the successes that we have registered as an institution, so that we can also count on our shortcomings and make adjustments. It is not always you sit at your corner, you criticize, condemn the National Assembly, but face to face, we discuss issues and try to listen to each other so that we all try to gather common understanding and find a way out. I want to believe this kind of forum is geared towards that direction. I could observe that the theme in the program is about interface between CSOs and parliamentarians, knowing your parliamentarians and their challenges. During the course of the interface, we'll be discussing about the recent past legislations, the 2025 budget, and as well as the much talk about draft constitution 2024. I think the theme is very important, and the items enlisted are very important as far as the development of this country is concerned. Our role in the National Assembly mainly is about legislating. It is one thing to legislate, but to implement is another. Our job limits us to legislating. Now, for the implementation, that is beyond our control. When we make laws, laws are meant to be implemented. Whether they are implemented or not, that should be our common position to ensure that our laws are implemented. I think this is the weakness of the Gambia. There are many laws, people are ignorant of the existence of those laws. To have a forum of this nature to try to measure how laws are implemented is important. If you make a law, you will not know whether that law is good or bad until when you get to the implementation. And there you realize that this particular provision of the law doesn't cope with the current realities. Then suggestion can come for possible amendments. But if you don't follow that trend, you will not know the weakness or the weak part of the law. So therefore, any legislation that is passed in the National Assembly, if your sector is concerned, you need to make that thorough monitoring on the implementation of those particular laws. In the event they require any amendment, proposal can come. If not from the executive, you can forward to a parliamentarian for a possible private member's bill. I think that way we can measure and try to make our laws to be efficient. On the aspect of the budget, we have done our part almost. When the budget was laid by the minister, our standing orders and the constitution dictates that the National Assembly should go on a retreat to have a common understanding about the content of the budget. Then thereafter, the respective committees will be engaging their respective MDAs and ministries on budget bilateral. This is where we find it very challenging. Last year, I could recall that at the end of the retreat, we all went with the common position that we are concerned about the deficit, and we need to bring down the budget deficit. The cuts that we are going to make from our respective MDAs and ministries should be saved so that we can cut down the deficits. Only for us to make challenges when we face with our respective MDAs and ministries, the issues that are confronting them regarding the low income that they are expecting. All ministries and MDAs are crying that what they are expecting as revenue is not sufficient to run their ministries and their MDAs. You take them through, they will tell you what we submitted to finance had been cut almost to 50% to 75% or even below. So what we want now, National Assembly, we are at your mercy. Even whereas we are not going to get all, let us have something to be able to run our ministries. And that is why the cuttings that we made are so that we can cut down the deficit. But the committees could not sit down with their respective ministries and they cry without finding a solution to their problems. What they resort to is to try to strategize. The important budget lines that are priority budget lines, the cuttings that they were able to make so that they reallocate those savings to those very important budget lines. Most of them ended totally reallocating their cuttings to those important budget lines, based on the recommendation and the cries of the ministries and the respective MDAs. I think mainly it was only my committee that was able to save a lot. And then at the floor of the House, we went with this notion that we are going to save this so that the deficit can be reduced. Believe me, we could not. Because there we have no power. It is the plenary that has passed. All of them were now demanding that this particular budget line need this and so increment. And when we provided our savings, almost over 400 million, at the end, they relocated all that to the respective important budget lines. This time, now instead of going to the plenary with that savings of 416 million this time round, I took it upon myself with my committee, try to identify these health, education, they are very key, and agriculture. Then the rest can be redistributed to important budget lines. And then we had the relocation and redistribution done only for the approval of the plenary. And the plenary made amendment because they have the power. But we make sure that those important ministries are protected, especially higher education. We end up out of the 416, about 109 million was allocated to higher education. We were concerned about the areas that they are confronted with, being the school bus and in the scholarships, and much more, the entire development budget for higher education, we were told, was zero rise. So that means there will be no development component as far as higher education is concerned. And that's why we've said, out of these savings, we need to reallocate that amount of about 109 million to higher education. Now, these are the challenges that we are having. The resource envelope and the needs and aspirations of the ministries and then the MDAs. If we cut, we end up reallocating because we cannot see them suffering. Especially when the recurrent budget is inadequate. Your PE is inadequate. When there is no development budget, that you have to do something. You cannot get all, but at least the little that we save, you can have something out of it. And to end, they must talk about the draft constitution. Yes, it's before the National Assembly. If you are following the proceedings of the National Assembly, in the first agenda, this was cancelled for a good reason. It was supposed to be last week Saturday. I don't know exactly what was the date last week Saturday. And that one also was cancelled because we had engagement with Dr. Ibn Kembas, who was in town, engaging stakeholders and dialogue to find a way out for the 2024 draft budget. And what we observed,
Draft constitution.
or the draft constitution, or what we observed at that time, maybe up to now, the situation is very tense to have compromise over the draft constitution. Many people are demanding the people-centered draft constitution, but not the executive-centered draft constitution. And if that is the case, then therefore there should be that dialogue between the executive and the people. If National Assembly wants to bring the draft constitution on the 27th or last week, first reading, will be compelled to have the second reading done this session. According to our standing orders, if you have your first reading, at least 3 days later, you should have your second reading. There is no minimum or maximum time frame, but the minimum is 3 days. So now we delay that one. Instead of having it at that time, we are now going to have it on the 23rd. That is the last day of the current session. So that means it's not possible to have the second reading this session. And the second reading will be coming next session, probably around March. Maybe during that time or period, there could be room for dialogue, or else the situation as it looks, there is no hope for the 2024 draft constitution. All hope is not over until when all is over. So on that note, I thank you all.
Thank you very much. Wow. If the National Assembly is seeing uncertainties with regards to the 2024, then 2024 draft, then it means it is dead upon arrival, which we were not foreseeing. For me, probably we should look into even passing or moving a motion, because you have more motion of urgency, right? Is it urgency motion? Yeah, no, not certificate. A motion without notice on your standing order. Yeah, you can, probably one of you can push a motion for the executive to de-gazette the draft constitution and try to establish constituent assembly, and see how best we can bring it back. You can do a motion to the gazette a recommendation. I don't know how it works, so that it comes back to the people. Perception as to whether they want to go ahead with the 2024 draft or whether they want the 2020 draft with amendments to come on board. So I think this is the Gambia. We should find solution for ourselves as a country, especially in terms of deadlock, because this seems to be a deadlock. Some people are saying if it is touched, they are not going to support it. Some are saying they are supporting this draft. And sometimes the national interest, or in most cases, should override the political interest. And you've cited even the politicization of things before the plenary. I think this conversation is very important.
Just not intervene in that aspect, because there are two ways of consulting in the draft. It can be laid at the plenary and committed to a committee. And that committee now takes responsibility to all the stakeholders to get their opinions and question papers in the draft. The reason is because it is not being closed that there's not any clause or any sentence. It is open. So when it is laid at the plenary, it can be committed to a committee, whereby the committee now will take responsibility in order to reach out the entire stakeholders and hear from them, have their position papers, and also prepare a report and submit to the plenary.
So there is a challenge. They made mention of they will come up with recommendations, and things will be politicized at the plenary. That becomes a problem. Now, if you do that, and it comes back to the plenary, then it is politicized, then it becomes a problem. So why not you move a motion, it comes back to the public.
That's why if you, in many fora, especially where good, how to call it, Dr. Kemba's organized, I did tell them that the constitution, that is the 2020, was rejected before it was even laid in Parliament. And if you don't want the replica, and why it was rejected, simply because it was the political parties and politicians who rejected the 2020.
Exactly.
Their position was the position of the parliamentarians. Let's call a spade a spade.
And that's the fact.
Constitution is a legal national instrument, but equally a political tool.
Yes.
And any parliamentarian at the floor of the chambers, you cannot go against your political party position as far as the constitution is concerned. Because you have the belief that it is protecting your political interests.
Yes.
If you don't want the same to happen to whatever draft you may come with, make sure you have that political understanding and consensus on the draft.
Yes.
Don't make that mistake and bring it. I told him that. Unfortunately, that did not happen.
Yeah.
And when he came again, this was what I told him. What is going to happen at the floor of the House, even what they call that we'll have the committees, and committees will consult institutions, organizations will come with their position papers. Will those position papers be recognized or accepted at that committee level?
Exactly. So that's the point.
When we are guided by the instrument of simple majority, and those who are majority will speak the language of the executive. And the language of executive is what is filtered on the 2024. It's an executive instrument. Then therefore there will be very little room to do any amendment against the position of the executive.
Absolutely.
This is the reality. Going to people fine is fine. But with their views and their likings be accepted at the floor of the House against the executive position, when the executive is having majority and the other side are minority, that can propose those amendments. This is the reality.
I think let us not open debate.
But it's good. No, for me, it's good. It's good for me. I think, guys, this is very important. It's good to know, the timing, you guys are going. We will allow you to go. Now they are giving us a gist of how the mentality of the parliament, CSOs and media guys. And this is the fact. We really need to look into this and digress whether, how realistic this process will be in terms of, the timing, no, we want to allow them. We want to. I've seen them having. I'm pleading.
For the parliamentarians.
We want to allow.
We agreed that they will come. They will start here first. Because their session starts at 10. And then if they are done. Whilst we are here, they might come back. But if not, we write our recommendations.
A recommendation.
To them. And we will take it from there. Because this is just the beginning. We will keep, because this is very important. It is the interest of every Gambian for this document to go through smoothly with everybody, with the consensus that the Gambia is moving to another step. Because it was a promise. It was a promise, and we want to support to keep this promise.
So thank you. I think we should have a group photo before you go. Let's have a quick one outside. Let's